that is the part that is prone to the harvest now, decrypt later attack. And this is the part that needs to be addressed right now.
We're being told that Q-Day is getting closer, but let's be honest, it's still a little bit of a mystery for so many. Joining me is a returning guest, Arvid Vermote, CISO at GlobalSign.
Before the certificate authorities can actually issue certificates that are post-quantum resistant, there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Do you remember the days of the dial-up internet, that screeching modem sound waiting minutes for a single page to load? Then broadband arrived and our entire digital experience changed overnight. Quantum computing is about to do the same, but on a much bigger scale. When Q-Day hits, it won't just be faster, it will rewrite the rules of security and encryption. Welcome to Trust.ID Talk. I'm Michelle Davidson, and today we're tackling a highly requested, complex topic, post-quantum computing. If you've ever wondered what it really means and why it matters to you, you're in the right place. Joining me is a returning guest, Arvid Vermote, CISO at GlobalSign. Welcome back, Arvid.
Hi, Michelle. Great to be here again.
So last time you were on the podcast, we talked a little bit about the CAB forum, but we also touched on crypto agility and getting ready for Q-Day. We have heard a lot about it in the news. We're seeing new standards and algorithms, and we're being told that Q-Day is getting closer. But let's be honest, it's still a little bit of a mystery for so many. So can we kick off the conversation of what is the top level view people really need to understand or know now about quantum computing?
Yeah, so I think first of all, we need to untangle the fuss or buzz related to post-quantum cryptography and quantum computing, right? Everyone seems to toss or coin that term to everything that relates to cryptography, but actually there's two separate areas of it. And depending on that, the timing is more pressing and the risks are bigger towards enterprises. So when you talk about TLS, which is why we are here, right? There's actually two separate areas where post-quantum cryptography is relevant. The first one is the part of the TLS handshake where the keys are exchanged. So based on that key exchange, the traffic is actually encrypted and protected from interception and disclosure. Now, that is the part that is prone to the harvest now, decrypt later attack. And this is the part that needs to be addressed right now, as right now there's no quantum computers available that can break it, but of course this can be stored for 5 years, for 10 years, then decrypted, and depending on the information still have a significant impact if disclosed. Important to understand, however, is apart from the technology slowly getting ready with POCs, it's also very adamant that websites are running TLS 1.3 because that's the only TLS version that will actually support this quantum resistance encryption and key exchange. Right now, only 60% of all internet traffic is TLS 1.3, based on our own statistics. So yeah, there's a big catch-up that needs to happen there, because for the other 40%, post-quantum resistance cryptography in key exchange will not be able to be implemented. Now, the other part then related to TLS, where PQC is relevant, is of course the certificate and PKI part, the trust chain, which is where we as a company are relevant. There, the need for post-quantum cryptography is less critical. Why is that? Because this whole exchange of the certificate authority and the certificate that supports the TLS change is done every time a user starts a new session, a TLS session with a website. So as we know, the post-quantum computers will only be there in 5 to 10 years. Only then there will be a risk of being attacked, hence your connection being intercepted, right? So even though it's less pressing, everyone knows it's coming. And before the certificate authorities like GlobalSign can actually issue certificates that are post-quantum resistant, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. The first part is the certificate profile itself. That standard needs to be expanded to actually include the conventions in terms of the certificate fields, the byte sequences and everything in which those post-quantum resistant signatures can be embedded. So that's the first step. And then only after that, it's actually up to the browsers to modify their software so they can actually start parsing those certificates that do include those post-quantum resistant algorithms and signatures. Then next to that, we have the HSMs itself. which are like the secure enclaves. They are specialized computers that can do cryptography in a secure way. They also need to support these new algorithms, and for that, they rely again on standardization by NIST, and then a very lengthy certification process to get an HSM certified against that new version of the NIST standard. The NIST standard is called FIPS, and HSMs need to be certified against it before CAs are allowed to issue public certificates from them. Then another problem that needs to be tackled, and I know I'm sounding very doom and gloom by all these things, is the actual size problem, which for me is the biggest one. So right now, whenever a web user goes to a specific website, in the establishment of the initial TLS session, the certificate itself is approximately 500 bytes to 2 kilobytes of traffic. Doesn't sound like a lot, but if you know how many billions of TLS sessions are established every day, it's a lot of volume that needs to go to the global internet. Now, as I said, with the traditional algorithms we have right now, so RSA and ECC, it's 500 bytes to 2 kilobytes. The smallest we can currently get with the post-quantum resistant algorithms that have been approved and are the likely candidates for TLS certificates is 17 kilobytes. If you then multiply that by the billions of sessions that happen every day, it's a massive impact to the internet backbone. So there is a lot of research going on related to that to try to get the size down. As it looks right now, it's just not workable. If all of that is addressed, then we still have the CAP forum itself, which will need to approve these new algorithms in the requirements, the baseline requirements for TLS certificates. After that, CAs would be allowed to issue certificates based on those algorithms without violating the CAP forum and the browser policies. So yeah, I mean, that's a long monologue, but that's basically a summary of everything that is still required for the whole PKI and certificate trust chain part of a TLS connection to be PQC ready.
So in terms of the harvest now, decrypt later, you mentioned earlier at the beginning around TLS 1.3 is the one that organizations should be ensuring that they're up to date with. There is stuff that organizations can be doing now that you've mentioned there that will very much help them stay the longevity course for their business.
I fully agree. One thing, of course, is making sure that TLS 1.3 is provided on all the services they expose, which actually should have happened a long time ago, because in TLS 1.2, 1.1, there's a lot of specific vulnerabilities, but typically companies keep providing them for all their legacy clients, but then it's to make sure that those clients can use the newer versions. However, I think on top of that, so making sure that you have TLS 1.3, everything related to certificate agility comes again into place, but also what they these days call a CBOM, which is a cryptographic bill of material, which basically is both the CLM part, where you have an inventory of your certificates, which is one area where you, of course, need to be aware what you have. But on the other hand, is also a whole inventory asset management system for the places where you actually expose TLS connections. And then not only which certificates you use and which algorithms, but also which type of TLS algorithm you use. Is it 1.3, 1.2? And then on top of that, which cryptographic provider are you using to actually operate the TLS connection itself? And then we are going deeper into OpenSSL, Apache, Nginx, because it's also important that they have an inventory of that in their generic CBOM to make sure that, yeah, if they in the future start getting those post-quantum resistant certificates, of course, they also need to make sure that the web server software itself and the TLS software on top can not only host post-quantum resistant certificate, but can also establish and do the TLS handshake in a post-quantum resistance way, right? And I think there is still a lot of a lack of awareness that there is two parts that need to be right when it comes to TLS connections. A lot of people seem to think it's only the certificate or it's only the handshake part, but it's actually both of them that will need to be in place in order to be fully post-quantum resistant. And the priority, as I said before, should be right now on the key exchange itself, because that's the one harvest now, decrypt later. Even though post-quantum computers do not yet exist, data might be stored for later attack. I would say the whole certificate chain part is less important, but certificate agility is still a pressing matter, given everything else that's going on related to reduced certificate lifetimes.
You read my mind, Arvid. I was literally going to use that as a segue. So perfect. Talking about certificate and lifespans getting shorter in various areas of PKI. So obviously we do have TLS, as all the SSL TLS certificates getting shorter in March to 200 days, going down to 47 days by 2029. How does that factor into all of these different areas? It's just all part of the strategy and the plan that organizations should be adopting to have that crypto agility and the ability to be more responsive in the long term. So flipping from that firefighting mode to that more strategic mode.
Yeah, I think the certificate agility should have been done a few years ago. A lot of organizations have suffered recently because of CA distrust issues, CA incidents, where a lot of certificates were revoked and organizations were not able to replace them in time because they lacked the crypto agility that the CAs and the browsers have been preaching for a few years, right? I just hope that this combination of recent incidents, the certificate reduction, and the looming threat of the post-quantum encryption or the post-quantum computers breaking encryptions will be enough for CISOs and CIOs to go to the board and finally get that funding to invest into crypto agility and make sure that they can, how you say it in English, hit a few birds with one stone, with making sure that they can quickly manage and swap certificates.
It's very much a long-term strategy for the security rather than a short-term fix. What is the role of organizations such as the CAB Forum, or if you look at the areas of other areas of compliance, you've got NIST as well. What is the role of those sorts of organizations within PQC?
So NIST is actually one of the ground layers of proof of concepting and actually selecting then the algorithms that will ultimately make that list of secure, between brackets, post-quantum resistant encryption algorithms. On top of that, they also define the necessary standards then for secure HSMs, against which HSMs need to be certified in order to, in a secure manner, then do cryptographic operations related to those algorithms. So that's where the role of NIST is. If you talk about the CAB Forum defines the requirements to which CAs need to comply. They go from generic disclosure of statements to security responding to incidents, but then also, of course, related to the certificates itself, where it's the CAB Forum, so the browsers and the CAs together, that will ultimately decide, pilot, and endorse a new algorithm that CAs would be allowed to use to provide post-quantum resistant certificate. Now, talking about the CAB Forum, it is an interesting space because right now, PQC for TLS is being discussed, but everyone knows it's not yet the time because of everything I just mentioned. However, for the SMIME requirements, it was actually already approved, and it is in the requirements that SMIME certificates with PQC algorithms are allowed to be issued. However, then most interestingly, major email software providers like Outlook do not yet support those post-quantum resistant algorithms. So even though we're now allowed to issue those certificates, there's no market for it yet because emails are just not yet trusted. Same with CodeSign. There are discussions for PQC algorithms there in certificates, but right now, code signing is mainly and purely a Microsoft Windows area, and Microsoft is not yet keen on supporting PQC related algorithms. So sometimes even though it's in the requirements, it doesn't make sense for CAs to invest the effort yet to start issuing those certificates.
But at least it's being future-proofed, like you're saying, in those baseline requirements and the considerations. It's coming into play much earlier, which is unusual in the compliance arena. So that we are getting ahead of ourselves and embedding that in what we're expecting rather than trying to do it on the back foot, which ultimately can lead us to more security risks.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at TLS certificates, so a lot of work still needs to be done there. But in parallel, there is a lot of discussion going on related to issuing hybrid certificates. So certificates that both carry signature chains based on the traditional algorithms, RSA and ECC, but then also carry the same set of signatures based on PQC algorithms. And then website operators could serve those certificates, and depending on whether the client already supports PQC or not, the search chain could be built based on the traditional ones or the future ones. That way, we could be less dependent, or the CAP forum can be less dependent on all those prerequisites we just discussed being completed. And at least for those customers that are really willing to be ahead of the curve, be the early adopters who have those certificates there, already serve a solution. It might not yet be guaranteed to work everywhere and for every user.
So lots of change still to come in the cryptography PKI world, and also the tech, kind of wider tech cybersecurity space. So it will be an interesting time to navigate in our careers, I'm sure, and for all our listeners as well. That is all we have time for today. But thank you for rejoining us, Arvid, to unpick that very complex topic. And I'm sure there are more, and we'd love to have you on again at some point. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This has been Trusted Talk. Until next time.
Thank you.